Do you ever feel like you just don't have the time to sit down and read the news every morning? Sometimes things get so hectic you can't even scroll through your feeds while you're trying to get ready. A new podcast from Boise State Public Radio has you covered. I'm George Prentice, and I want to invite you to check out The Connector every weekday morning. You can get up to speed on all of the Idaho news you need to start your day without ever interrupting your morning routine. All you have to do is hit play. That's The Connector from Boise State Public Radio. Find it wherever you get your podcasts.
From the studios of Boise State Public Radio News, I'm Gemma Gaudette. This is Idaho Matters, and it's Friday, which means it's time for our Reporter Roundtable. We're going to get you up to date on the news that made headlines this week, including the goings-on at the State House. So today, our panel includes Mia Maldonado, state politics reporter at the Capital Sun, and Logan Finney with Idaho Reports. Happy Friday, both of you.
Happy Friday, Gemma. Thanks for having us.
Hi, Gemma.
So, hi, Mia. Logan, let's start with some news that just came out of the State House in regards to Medicaid expansion. First, can we just start with the basics of what Medicaid expansion is in case folks are not aware of it?
Absolutely. So Medicaid is a federal program which helps poor people and people with disabilities access health insurance specifically. Now, that is a program that has existed for a long, long time, but there was an issue where it only covers up to a certain amount of income, and then there was what was called the Medicaid gap. So it was this group of people that made too much to get on Medicaid, but they didn't make enough to be able to afford their own health insurance. So there was a long time where folks were campaigning at the legislature to try and expand Medicaid. This is an option under the Affordable Care Act, and the lawmakers were very opposed to doing so. Eventually, it culminated in a ballot initiative, and Idaho voters themselves implemented Medicaid expansion at the ballot box in 2018. So this covers a large group of people, and there's a cost-sharing amount with the federal government, and this is a program that is pretty much a perennial talking point at the State House.
With that said, Logan, I mean, there are about 95,000 Idahoans who are part of Medicaid expansion. So this could impact a large portion of Idahoans based on what just happened at the State House, because there's been a bill introduced, correct, to repeal Medicaid expansion?
That's right. Yes, my wonderful colleague Ruth Brown here at Idaho Reports, she was at that committee hearing this morning, and she was able to get a copy of the bill that was introduced. And yeah, it's pretty straightforward. It's just a clean, straight-up repeal of Medicaid expansion. Undo the ballot initiative and go back to the existing normal standard Medicaid program. And lawmakers have been talking about this. It's been kind of within the realm of possibility, or at least in the realm of discussion, for years now, basically since the ballot initiative was passed. But it's a question of whether there's enough support among the members of the legislature to get it passed. So in prior years, they've not gone so far as to actually the proposals to fully repeal Medicaid expansion have not made it very far in the process, and usually they're putting sideboards or some sort of work requirement or affecting the details of it. So this morning, Friday, was just a introductory hearing, which means there was not very much discussion on the bill. There was no public testimony. It was just getting it printed and assigned a bill number. So this will come back likely before the House Health and Welfare Committee before long, and we will get to hear public testimony about it.
So, Logan, clarify something for us. So back in 2018, as you mentioned, there was a voter initiative on the ballot that passed fairly overwhelmingly when it came to Medicaid expansion. More than 60% of Idaho voters voted yes for Medicaid expansion. It went into effect. How then can lawmakers take away a voter initiative that was voted on, that the people of Idaho said, yes, we want this?
That is a really great question, and I appreciate you asking that. When here in Idaho, anyways, other states are slightly different, but here in Idaho, when voters are passing a ballot initiative, they are writing laws. They are affecting changes to the state code, and they are on a exactly complete equal footing with the lawmakers. We, as the citizens, get to legislate through the ballot box in the same way that they do at the legislature. So the flip side of that also means any changes we make, the legislature has the power to undo or to modify or to change. And so that's what we've seen over the last several years is them making small tweaks to try and save money. Really, their biggest concern is especially the Republicans, the most conservative ones in the legislature, say there have been enormous cost overruns and that this is not exactly the program and the spending and saving that the proponents of the ballot initiative back in 2018 promised when it was passed with that 62% vote that you referenced.
So with that said, though, Logan, clarify then this money issue. As you said, there are Republicans in the state house who say this is just costing too much. I mean, we could potentially go in the red if we continue spending at this level when it comes to Medicaid expansion. On the flip side of that, you have opponents to this bill, but even people who just look at numbers, right, and cost, that it could cost us more by not having Medicaid expansion because people still need access to medical care. And so that's going to then cost the state potentially more money, in particular in our rural areas.
Yeah, it's this trade-off where in before Medicaid expansion, there were all these county level programs and something that was called the Catastrophic Health Fund that um, there were things that the state did to help take care of those people, to make sure the
Mm-hmm.
emergency room bills got paid for people who didn't have insurance, that sort of thing. But part of the deal with Medicaid expansion was we're going to use Medicaid expansion to take care of those people instead. So we're in a situation now where all those old programs to take care of those people have been unwound. That money has been used in other ways or diverted to other programs. Yeah, and with Medicaid expansion, it's a program where the state only pays for 10% of the costs. The federal government picks up 90% of the bill. I have the piece of legislation from this morning in front of me estimates that Medicaid expansion will cost the state over $1 billion. And so they estimate that if we no longer are in this program, the 10% that we pay in that we would save would be about $110 million each year in savings. Democrats like Senate Minority Leader Melissa Wintrow say that doesn't take into account the full picture because then these people won't have insurance again, and then we'll have to spend all sorts of other money to take care of them, either in the ways that we used to or come up with some new program entirely.
Mm-hmm. So, as you mentioned in the beginning of this conversation, Logan, the bill was just introduced. Was it this morning? It was this morning, correct?
Yes, 8 o'clock Friday morning. Yes.
So, what happens now that the bill has been introduced?
It will be assigned a bill number. I don't have that in front of me, but it'll be House Bill something. And then it'll likely get referred back to that House Health and Welfare Committee, where the chairman, Representative John Vanderwoude of Nampa, has been a proponent for several years. He's been pretty supportive of wanting to repeal Medicaid expansion entirely. So we will keep an eye on the agendas on the legislature's website to see when that is going to come up for an actual full public hearing.
And if there is a public hearing, Logan, does that means that the public can testify as well, correct?
Yes, yeah, that's right. You typically, if you sign up in person there the day of, or most of these, I think all of the committees now, I'd have to check, but I think all the committees now let you sign up online ahead of time to get in that list of people who are interested in testifying.
All right. Well, appreciate the update on this, Logan. I'm sure it is not the last we're going to hear of this at all, because as you said, this ever since this we had Medicaid expansion, it seems that it comes up every year in the legislature.
Yes, and even if this bill to completely repeal it is not successful, there are all sorts of ideas in that building about how to tweak the program and try and save money.
So, Logan, school choice has been quite the hot topic at the legislature since last year. And this week, we saw some new bills. So, can you tell us what's been proposed so far?
Definitely. School choice has been the term on everyone's lips around the State House this year. And it even got a shout out in Governor Brad Little's State of the State address at the beginning of the legislative session. The governor indicated he'd be willing to put $50 million towards some sort of expanded school choice option for private schools. That's the new thing, is the private school element of that. So the governor said, I'm willing to put 50 million towards this. Lawmakers, you can decide what that actually looks like. And the governor also spelled out kind of some accountability standards he wants the lawmakers to meet with that bill. So this week we actually saw the first versions of what the lawmakers are proposing. The kind of most highly anticipated one, I think, is a bill from Representative Wendy Horman, who is from Idaho Falls, and from Senator Lori Den Hartog from Meridian. These two are kind of thought leaders at the legislature when it comes to education issues, and they've been workshopping this bill for quite some time. They've also been coordinating with the governor's office, talking about the details in it. And this would set up a $50 million account for tax credits. So this would be a situation where parents who take their children out of public schools and put their children into private schools could put their expenses for those private schools, things like tuition, curriculum, class supplies, and other and it's not solely private schools, but non-public
Hmm.
school options. There's kind of a broader umbrella that covers. So people would be able to turn those receipts in with their taxes at the end of the year and get a credit from the state to cover those expenses. It'd be up to $5,000 a child, and there's a limit on how much each family could collect. And this $50 million bill fits very nicely into that $50 million opening that the governor indicated he'd be interested in. So this bill was just printed this week. They haven't had the full hearing, but it's been introduced and given a bill number. And we will see whether they get the support for it. This is being a tax credit. It's interesting that it's going through the tax committee instead of the education committee, where last year's
Hmm.
bills on things like education savings accounts have gone through. There has not been a critical mass in the past to implement some sort of education savings account program like the state of Arizona has. So this year they're really putting the energy into the tax credit route to see if that's more palatable to more folks.
But Logan, last year, didn't they try the tax credit route as well?
They did, yes. It went through the same committee, and it was voted down very narrowly. So I don't have the exact vote in front of me, but it was a
Hmm.
pretty close divide on that tax committee. There are also several of those lawmakers are not there anymore because they either retired or lost a primary. And the makeup of the committee has been shaken up as well. There's multiple veteran lawmakers who are now there who were on other committees in the past who are now on the tax committee. So it's still early in the session. I haven't gotten personally a feel for how excited the various folks are on that committee, but it's a situation where Speaker of the House, Mike Moyle from Star, he's also in support and pushing for some sort of school choice option. He's the guy who writes that committee list. So I think it's reasonable to assume he put folks who would be pretty interested in this option on that committee.
Hmm. So, Logan, what's interesting to me, and just anecdotally, when this bill came out, of course, it got into headlines, and it was on, and links on social media, and I was curious about reading comments to see what the average person thought about any type of school choice, but this one in particular being tax credit. And I have to say, surprisingly, the majority of comments I read were opposed to any type of subsidy of state money for someone to use specifically to private schools. So, with that said, are lawmakers listening to constituents on this? I mean, I know that's a big question to ask, but it was just interesting to read these comments.
Yeah, that is really interesting. I think they definitely are hearing from constituents. They're hearing from both from people who are very vocal supporters and defenders of the public school system. Here in
Hmm.
Idaho, it's constitutionally mandated that the legislature must establish and fund and make sure everything is a stable, uniform public school system is required of the legislature here in Idaho. And so some folks are saying, why, if in some people's eyes we haven't even met that responsibility, why are we setting up a whole nother stream of funding for education outside of the public school system? That really raises some folks' hackles. Um, on the other hand, the reason why lawmakers are proposing this in the first place is because they are hearing from constituents. There are
Hmm.
parents, especially among newer families who have moved to Idaho from other states in recent years, who are not happy with what's offered in this public school system, or perhaps their student has some sort of individualized learning needs that they're not able to get the
Hmm.
resources for in the public school. And so there really is a really earnest belief among some of the lawmakers that opening up some sort of private school option and not using that as a way to encourage everyone to abandon the public schools en masse, but
Mm.
opening some sort of option could be really helpful for those parents who need extra support that they can't find in the public system and they need a little bit of financial help to be able to access those things. So it is
And
they are listening to constituents. It's just really passionate people on either side of the issue, I would say.
I would agree with that. And Logan, you're going to have a lot more tonight on Idaho Reports because you guys will be talking with both lawmakers, but also Idaho Superintendent Debbie Critchfield about this.
Yes, we spoke while my colleague Ruth was in that Health and Welfare Committee meeting. I was at the studio where Melissa Davlin is speaking with Superintendent of Schools Debbie Critchfield about what she would like to see in a school choice bill, what sort of influence she's had, and then we also talked to Senator Den Hartog and Representative Horman, the sponsors of that bill, and we also speak with Representative Steve Birch from Boise, who is the assistant Democratic leader in the House, and he is one of those among all his Democratic colleagues who are very opposed to any sort of school choice bill being passed this year. So we get his thoughts and his opposition to that as well. It's a bunch of really great conversations. It's going to be a great show tonight.
And Mia, President Trump signed an executive order earlier this week stopping, at least temporarily, the Lava Ridge Wind Project in the Magic Valley. Can you tell us about this?
Hi, Gemma. Yeah, so out of the many executive orders President Trump signed on Monday after inauguration, one of them impacts Idaho directly, and one of them was an order to stop the Lava Wind Ridge project just right northeast of Twin Falls. The wind project in December was approved by the Bureau of Land Management after years of being in the permitting process. So this project attracted a lot of controversy. It would have spanned 100,000 acres of public lands with more than 200 wind turbines and reaching about 660 feet in a maximum height. So on one hand, it received a lot of opposition from politicians, locals in the ranching and outdoor recreation industries. And most prominently, it received opposition from the Japanese American community, which said its development would take away from the immersive experience at Minidoka National Historic Site, which was a site of a former incarceration camp for Japanese Americans during World War II. Environmentalists, on the other hand, they said this project would promote energy independence and boost Idaho's economy by creating jobs, tax revenue for those local communities. So going back to what the executive order says, the order says the project is contrary to the public interest and suffers from legal deficiencies. So Idaho's congressional delegation, our attorney general, have really tried to prevent this wind project from developing. And our Senator Jim Risch, he worked closely with the incoming Trump administration to craft the executive order. So what it does,
right.
it revokes the rights of Magic Valley Energy to proceed with the project, and it instructs the U.S. Secretary of the Interior to review the record of decision and conduct a new analysis of the different impacts it would have. So I reached out to the Bureau of Land Management and Magic Valley Energy to see what's next. I didn't get a response from either of them, so it's really unclear what their next steps will be. But as Rish's office says, his office said that the order fully revokes the project.
So, but my understanding, Mia, is that even though it has paused right now, it could it could pick up again at some point, correct? After this investigation.
Honestly, it's unclear. Like I said, Senator Jim Risch, he said, the intention of this executive order was to get rid of the project in its entirety. And I reached out to the Bureau of Land Management and when Magic Valley Energy, and both groups didn't give me a response. So we're really not sure what's going to happen next.
And Logan, before we wrap up, I've got about a minute and a half left. Can you quickly tell us about what's going on in regards to a pay increase for legislators? Because some legislators don't want this pay increase, but some do. So where are we with this?
Sure, yeah, I'll make it quick. The legislature was due for a pay increase this year. Some of the most conservative members of the legislature have said now is not a good time to do raises for lawmakers. We should be focused on tax relief. The Senate passed a measure to reject the pay raise, The House then took that measure and stuffed it in a drawer and passed their own measure, accepting the pay increase and giving themselves the option to also donate it toward tax relief. If individual lawmakers would not like to take their salary, they could donate it into a fund that helps with property tax relief. So technically, the pay increase goes into effect automatically if they don't do anything. So kind of the situation now is the Senate could take or leave what the House passed, but unless things change dramatically, that pay increase is on its way.
All right. Appreciate both of you so much and all the reporting you've been doing. We've been speaking with Mia Maldonado, state politics reporter at the Idaho Capital Sun, and Logan Finney with Idaho Reports. And of course, you can catch Idaho Reports tonight on Idaho Public Television, a great conversation they'll be having around school choice. I'm Gemma Gaudette, and this is Idaho Matters.
If you like podcasts like this, explore more from the Boise State Public Radio podcast family. There you'll find a mix of daily news, Idaho Voices, and in-depth series on a wide range of topics. I'm talking wild horses, political scandals, sustainable ranching, and militia groups in a post-January 6th world. Wherever you get your podcasts, just search Boise State Public Radio to find what Idaho's NPR station has in store for you.